All right, I'd like to call this Milwaukie City Council work session to order and welcome Brian McCready to talk about the Milwaukie Youth Empowerment Coalition update, and Molly Martinez. Welcome.
Thanks. Thanks for having us. So,
Steve, do you want to answer?
Well, actually, I think the mayor just did a great job.
it's McCready, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay, because it's kind of rare, that spelling of it. McCready is much more common with the C-R-E-A-D-Y.
Yeah.
So it's because he butchered it, I didn't have to.
There you go.
But, Brian and Molly are here. They've been doing a lot of work. I think you guys had a presentation from them last year around this time, I would imagine. They've been working through H3 on the Youth Empowerment Coalition, if I said it correctly. And they do a lot of work with our kids in the high school and junior high with drug and alcohol awareness and education, and probably a lot more than that. But Brian's been trying to hook up with me over the last couple months, and that hasn't happened. Probably more my issue than his with scheduling and stuff like that. So I'm here to kind of listen to the presentation as much as you guys are and kind of get an update on what they've been doing in our schools. So with that, I'll let you guys have at it.
Thanks. So the Milwaukie Youth Empowerment Coalition was formed a little over 2 years ago with a focus on reducing underage drinking for 12 to 20-year-olds. And what we did was the first year we spent planning, determining which community within the county that we would focus on. And there was a couple factors why we chose Milwaukie. One, it's not to say that Milwaukie had the highest underage drinking rates of the county. It's not the case. There were some communities that were actually a little higher, but there was more readiness to do something right away here, and we didn't want to spend 3 years of a grant project trying to get the community ready to engage and do the work. So that's a good thing. So we started the project, and this is just an update on some of the work we've been doing. Last year, when we talked to you about Dogwood Park and Klein Point, we'll update you at the end. But I know there was some questions as we ran out of time last time about what are some of the other things we do. And so today I'm going to kind of give you the full gamut of what we are about with the coalition work and different activities that we've done the last year. So we work with Milwaukie High School. The drug and alcohol treatment counselor there is Jesus Navarro. And there was a lot of interest from the Hispanic students to have a Spanish dance. And so we helped support that. That happened in February. And we had about 120 high schoolers come out for that, and really fun time. Spanish music all night long. We were able to provide pizza and drinks for water for the kids, and it was really a fun event. And so that's just something I think we hope to continue, maybe yearly. Kids were really just enjoyed it a lot, and Molly was there. She helped chaperone that night, and I came, and I think it was a good event, don't you?
Absolutely.
So then, PreventNet. I think somebody asked the question, what are we doing in the schools? Well, the PreventNet program is, first of all, the funding is through the Oregon Department of Education, through the Oregon Youth Development Council. And the focus of PreventNet is to support consistent attendance and academic success with the students. Some of these students are kind of on the bubble. They're kind of on the edge there. We try to connect with them to actively engage in their learning and engage in the community. So one of the things that we do to engage them in the community is Photo Voice. And let me go back to that. And so it's a program where we give a group of kids cameras, and they're taught how to kind of look at the environment around them. And then they take photos about things that appeal to them, and then we kind of break it down, and then they create a collage of these photos and create kind of a story behind it. This is why they chose these photos. And Molly's been involved with that since the last couple of years. You want to share anything about Photo Voice?
Basically, it's teaching them how to advocate for social change in areas in the community that they would like to see change or more attention brought to it. So they express those issues through photography. So it's a combination between art and social justice advocacy, and it really gives a fun spin on bringing to light all of these issues that they're concerned about in their communities.
And do you, how do you identify, you mentioned kids on the edge, or, I mean, how do you identify that? Is that through Mr. Navarro, or are there other ways
I'll
that
let Molly answer that, because that's what she does. So.
Yeah, so we take referrals from concerned, counselors, teachers, other staff members. So it could be through Jesus, works with a lot of the students with drug and alcohol issues, but we also work closely with all the school staff. So we even take self-referrals. Pretty much anybody who feels like they need extra support or connections to resources, we'll reach out to them.
Do you have a permanent presence at the school? You have an office there? Or?
I do,
You
yes.
do, okay.
Yeah, so I work part-time at Milwaukie High School as well as New Urban High School, so I split my weeks between the two schools.
Great.
So part of the task is also, besides the one-on-one case coordination, is to reach out community and get community involved and get the young people involved in community. Photo Voice is an example of that. To help these students feel like school is a safe place where they can really grow, and that's where that bond with the PreventNet staff takes place. We do after-school programs, and the case coordination, like I said, 25 per site is what we try to shoot for, and that's a tall task when they're only half-time at the two sites. So here's some soccer camps that we did last summer at Rao, and then we took a group of kids to a Timbers game. Gil, who is the PreventNet coordinator at Alder Creek and at Rao, he is really, what's the word to say about soccer?
Avid soccer fan.
Avid with a capital A, V-E-I-N-D. So he loves soccer, and that love for soccer just goes to these kids, so it's cool. And then we went to Oaks Park, took them down there this summer for some fun. And then during spring break, we have a basketball camp that we have them be engaged in. So the next thing is positive community norms. And basically, positive community norms is trying to help these young people focus on the norm. The real norm is that most of the students do not use drugs and alcohol. And what we find is when we do this pre and post test is when they're surveyed, most of them think everybody's doing it. And that happens through social media, through television, through movies, through word of mouth, just the perception that everybody's using drugs and alcohol. So what we go in and we do a pre-survey, and then we talk to them about why their misperceptions are as they are. We teach them some media literacy skills. We teach them how media works and how it tries to kind of draw you in. And then at the end, they have an assignment to create a positive norm poster. So these are a few from last spring at Rao. And again, we give them lots of data to use to share with their poster. Okay, and here's a couple more. And then what we do is we have these put up in various places where they can see them. We would like to see them up, maybe at the Leading Library or different places in the community to really create a positive message. We collaborate with this with the Vibrant Futures Coalition, North Clackamas School District, and Safe Communities of Clackamas County. So there's kind of 4 partners there that implement this. And I do want to share a couple pre-post. We just got the surveys compiled for last month at Rex Putnam High School. So an example would be how many of we asked them about 11th grade, and we said, how many of the 11th graders do you think have had at least one drink of alcohol during the past 30 days? So on the pre-survey, they said about 40, let's see here. That's the wrong one. Okay, so on the pre-survey, about 49% said yes, they thought their peers had used, and 51% said no. On the post-survey, 38% said yes, and 63% said no. So that was fairly significant. Big one, of course, is marijuana. So that's one of the questions that we ask each time. On the pre, 56% thought most of their peers had used marijuana in the last month. 44% said no. And then on the post, 51% and 49%. So
is the post...
Same questions, exactly.
So you're not asking about did they use?
No.
You're asking about their perception
of what they think the kids in the school are using. Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the ones that we added this time, we had a cigarette question and a e-cigarette, vape pen, or hookah question. So the question was, what do you think percentage of used e-cigarettes, vape pens, or e-hookah in the last 30 days? 68% said yes on the pre-survey. Only 28% said yes on the post-survey. So we were able to have a really significant impact on that one, which it's always kind of surprising where you're going to see that kind of impact. So it seems to be working. It's an evidence-based program, so we are very thankful that we're in the schools at Rex Putnam and at RAL. And at RAL this month, we're going to do a new program that the SRO is also trained in. It's called Teen Marijuana Education Course, and we're going to be there for 7 days in a row teaching the eighth grade health class. And it's a 3-hour presentation, a lot of back and forth. So I'm looking forward. The first time I'll be doing that, so I look forward to that. I'll let Lindsay know about that as well.
She's actually teaching that this week, several classes on day 1 and day 2.
At
Milwaukie.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to touch base with her and find out how it's going for her, because I haven't done it yet. Okay, so there's that. And then finally, we'll wrap up with the update on the Dogwood Park restoration. We have had so much support from the North Clackamas
Parks and Recreation.
Yes, Parks and Recreation. Matthew Jordan was great last summer when we went and did just a big clearing. He had 3 or 4 volunteers, and we had 3 or 4 coalition members. And then last month we did some planting. So Jesus, the one we were talking about at Milwaukie High School, so it was him and Abby Wells, who's the coordinator of the Vibrant Futures Coalition. So we went out and planted about 85 different varieties of different plants on the slope to kind of help that erosion and give it some stability. So there's some information on what we did that I just cut and pasted in what Matthew sent me. So we cleaned it really, really thoroughly in August. And he was really good. He told us, what to trim back, what not to trim back, because we didn't really know. Some of it kind of looked all like weeds to me, but he said, no, these are the ones you want to keep, and he gave us kind of the walkthrough. Then we spent the day there, and then in February we planted envision what they'll look like when they grow up and bloom, but that's kind of what we've got there is the different types of plants.
Did students participate in this event?
No, we did it during the day. We tried to get some students from Youth Move. They're also a big partner, but it didn't work out that they were able to help us this time.
Okay. Might get some investment maybe if you can organize something on a weekend or
Yes.
sometime, and then that way,
Absolutely.
part of it is to prevent some activity at the park, right? So maybe
Yes.
there's student investment.
Yes. And so the other thing that we were looking at is the picnic tables, and then Kevin Kaysen informed me that there's a plan in place to create a plaza down there at the Dogwood Park, which is really exciting. And so he said, we'd rather not have you do the picnic tables. We'll just try to implement lots of different picnic tables in the plaza. Because a lot of this came from interviews with youth, and some of them were saying if there was a nice place down here, because it's so close to the high school, they'd walk down and have lunch there. And I think community members would also enjoy that too. So I'm looking forward to the plaza taking shape and being accessible to the community down there. So that's good news. So that's kind of an overview of some different areas of what we've been doing. So now if you have any questions, feel free to take them.
For the plaza,
Yeah, I would be cautious. The plaza is actually on the street.
The street?
Yeah. So if you're hearing from NCPRD that we will wait and do those, I think that is a good partnership. I think I'd like to see the design come together and then work with them. But the property you're talking about will not be paved. It'll remain a park. So we will just work with them to make sure that we connect that opening with some new infrastructure.
And are there not tables down there now?
There's
Do they
one.
take them out
There's
for the
just
winter?
one.
Just one?
And what we were proposing is that we would add another one in that little small grassy area, and then a couple over by those little orchard trees that are on the other side. So that would be 4, and that would be good for some people to come down and enjoy it. So yeah, that would if I knew, then we could also keep moving forward around trying to find funding to put a pad down and put some picnic tables in that area. But he kind of basically said, let's hold off, because we had filled out application to actually do that. And then he said, hey, I don't want you to waste your money. So that's kind of what information we had at this point.
Well, it's true that we're not building plaza into the park. I mean, there was originally a design that did that, bumped it out a little bit.
There was
Yeah.
an oval that kind of encroached into the park.
But it's also true that that whole street's going to be torn up all summer, right?
Correct.
So putting anything in right now doesn't make
Probably not
sense.
helpful.
Yeah.
And I think that it makes a ton of sense when we get to the point where we're holding the farmers market in that area. I mean, I think then you start looking at meeting pads and figuring out how to get some infrastructure in there, and we'd love the partnership on figuring that out. NCPRD, we're asking them to do a lot of things right now. So this also may be that they have to put this on a second tier, just knowing the other priorities we're asking for.
Yeah.
But I'm excited, and it is going to be a really neat part of town.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
And then Klein Point also, I guess there's more work going to happen down there.
The whole park, yeah.
It's great.
So, going way back, when are you finding that kids tend to start? I mean, you're working in route, so I'm assuming we're talking 6th or 7th graders, younger, when they start drinking, and then have you done any work around why kids that young start drinking?
Yes. Do you want to address that, or do you want me to? I mean, you're kind of more working with them and hearing from them directly. I just know from science on what.
Many different factors. I mean, just life circumstances. A lot of these kids are, low income, family influences. A lot of them come from troubled backgrounds, and that's how they end up in my program, and I end up working with them because there's a lot of need in the families, as well as lack of supervision and parental control over them. A lot of times the parents aren't all that involved and don't even know what these kids are getting up to. So that just makes it easier, as well as the availability, friends, and, just finding it in the community somehow, which you might be able to speak a little bit more on. But that's what I've seen from, being in the schools working with these kids specifically. Do you want to add some?
And accessibility. So it's kind of a perfect storm when it comes to alcohol, because basically when you look at alcohol, and let's just talk about marijuana as well, there's a purpose, and that's to make money. And so they want to make it look appealing to young people. So the colors and it draws them in, these wine coolers or the Four Loko or whatever it is. And also just to make it glamorized, like, yeah, it's cool. And we talk about that in the positive community norms about, you've got some guy holding up two babes on his shoulders, and there's this big bottle in the middle, and there's just like, and then some snappy little slogan along with it. So there's this idea, and again, social media, that, if it's gonna be beneficial for you to create friends. You're going to be able to find new friends and fit in better if you use. And one of the things that we talk about with the norms is like, so when they say like 80%, they think 80% of the kids are using marijuana, and then you ask them, why? And they just say, well, yeah, it's just what everybody's doing. But when you ask them, like, how many, when you start asking them who they think they know who's using it, they can't really tell, but they just know that everybody's doing it. So there's a norm around the acceptability of alcohol. And again, the family is huge, and then that 3 to 6 time period is also very important. After they get out of school and before mom and dad get home, those are times are really important to have constructive activities for them to be involved with. So there's a lot of factors out there, but parenting is huge, and as well as just creating connections with these kids. So mentoring is also a program I'm very passionate about, to try to get one person to engage them in one of these young people's lives and be that person for them, be that bridge to be connected to community. And so there's lots of things that we can do, but again, it's just I hope that kind of gives you a semblance of an answer.
And I'm going to just step in because we're about 5 minutes over on this agenda item.
Anybody else have any burning questions?
Good work. Yeah, thank you.
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
All right.
You thought of a burning question.
I did think of a burning question.
You did? Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if it's burning, but have you, in terms of marijuana usage, have you perceived an increase since legalization?
That's a great question. Not a dramatic increase. There has not been a dramatic increase yet.
Okay.
So there has been slight, but it's not like anything that we anticipate could be the case.
Okay.
Yeah, but there is an increase in is the kids that are using daily users. That has increased. So especially around like high school 11th, 12th graders, I think we're looking at about 6 to 7% of those kids use daily, and that's a huge issue because marketability for them, their future, it's really doesn't look good because how are they going to get a job? And then that's just the effect on the adolescent brain is not good with using that much
And
pot.
do you talk about that?
Yeah.
You talk about the brain, the
We do.
developmental aspects?
We do talk about the brain. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously there's a lot of room there for a lot more conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
After school programs, blah, blah, blah.
I just read a headline just the other day that this generation is actually using less drugs and alcohol than my generation did. So the trend is
Something similar.
downward,
Right, exactly.
generally speaking.
Cool. All right, so council update. Peter Passarelli, Climate Action Plan.
Good afternoon. I'm Peter Passarelli. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Milwaukee, and I wanted to spend a little time this afternoon and give you an update on our Climate Action Plan, where we are in the process. So, we started with our Climate Action Plan last fall when we hired good company to help us put together the climate action plan. And they're working with Enviro Issues, who are working with them to help us put together the community engagement part of our climate action plan. And Enviro Issues is also working on the city's comprehensive plan as well. So one of the first steps that we took once we developed our work plan for the climate action plan was to set up and recruit our climate action plan committee. So last December, we went out and recruited, and in early January, we interviewed members from the community to sit on the climate action plan, and we selected 9 members from the local community to be on that climate action plan committee. And then we also included 2 liaisons from the council, Mayor Gamba and Councilor Abma. And we also identified and included in that committee our big utility users, industrial users, PCC and Blunt. We invited PGE and Northwest Natural to participate on the committee, as well as the county, Clackamas County, and the school district as well. So we had our very first Climate Action Plan Committee in February, early part of February 8th to be exact. And at that meeting, it was sort of an introductory meeting where everybody got to meet everybody. And then the consultant, good company, Josh Proudfoot and Aaron and Kirsten went over a couple different items. They talked about our forecasted future physical conditions for Milwaukie. What's Milwaukie going to look like in 2050 or 2090? What are those conditions going to be if the climate continues to warm? They took a look at the different policies that we have in place in the community, in the region, and at the state and federal level, and what roles those policies play in helping us to either adapt or mitigate to climate change, and identified where there's some strengths and where there's some weaknesses in those policies, and tried to identify potential opportunities for improvement. And then we also went over our community-wide greenhouse gas inventory that we put in place, or that actually Tristan developed. Tristan Sewell, the intern that's been working with us for about a year, developed last spring into the early summer. And Good Company also, as part of that project, went through and audited that greenhouse gas inventory and identified a couple areas that needed some tweaking, and tweaked that inventory to improve, to give us a better snapshot of what that baseline was. So those were some of the things we covered at that meeting. And then we also went over the charter for the Climate Action Plan Committee. It's to act as an advisory committee to the City Council, and also discussed our community engagement plan. How are we going to engage the community as part of this process? So that was that first meeting that we had on February 8th. And then from there, we followed on with a meeting on February 13th with City Council, where we introduced to the council the idea of science-based targets to the community, and setting a climate action goal. After that meeting, we actually had our implementation workshops. We had 2 implementation workshops in the latter part of February, where we looked at the relationship with climate change to our natural resources, as well as our building and energy efficiencies. So at those meetings, we pulled in experts in the region from different agencies, from state agencies, from the private sector, and even local residents were invited. And some members from the Climate Action Plan Committee also attended those meetings. And at that meeting, we focused on what were some of the strategies that we could use to mitigate and adapt to climate change. What were some of the things that people were seeing, or these different groups and experts were seeing communities do, businesses do, and how could we potentially use those strategies for our community? And then we went through a little exercise where everybody got to put 5 dots on the different strategies that people identified to sort of vote to help us prioritize those strategies. And then from there, the idea was that the idea is that the good company is going to take those strategies and help us scale them to the right size for the community. In March, the tail end of March, we had the other 4 workshops, similar workshops, same things. But at those workshops, we took a look at the fleet and fuels, material purchasing and use and recovery, land use and transportation, and public health and emergency preparedness. We really had good turnout for all of those workshops. I think the smallest workshop was about 8. People showed up for that, and I think the largest we probably had about 14 or 15 people there. So good turnout, lots of good discussion and engagement in those meetings, and useful dialogue to help us put the climate action plan together.
So when you talk about fleet and facilities or purchasing, you're talking about the cities, or you're talking about this community more broadly, businesses in the community, their fleets as well? And
it's both.
It's both.
It's both, yeah. So we're looking at our internal operations, but also the external community as a whole, and how we can, what are the strategies that we can use to, both internally and externally, to adapt and mitigate to the changes. Okay. So one of the other parts of our climate action plan that Good Company and EnviroIssues is working on is that community engagement piece. So we've set up a couple different ways to try to engage the community. The first one was our climate action plan committee, getting that recruited and set up, getting the interested parties involved in that. We're planning on having 4 meetings, climate action plan meetings. We've actually increased our first meeting. I think we had it scheduled for about 2.5 hours. We've increased that to 3 hours for the future meetings that we're having, because it seemed a little compressed and we sort of ran out of time at that meeting. The other thing we've done that we've got scheduled is a climate action plan town hall summit at the end of May. We're going to do something similar to what the comprehensive plan is doing, I think, tomorrow evening. We're looking at using the same venue, the Waldorf School, to do that as well. And yesterday we worked with the comprehensive plan group and did a joint Latino community engagement focus group that EnviroIssues put together. I think there was a decent turnout for that. That was around about 4:30 to 6 o'clock yesterday afternoon here. We also provided some daycare for people so they could bring their kids and also some refreshments as well. We've also got our website information up on the website, on the city's website as well, and we update that with new information as we move along. So those are some of the community engagement pieces that we're doing, and then we're also looking at perhaps providing some additional information at our Earth Day event and Arbor Day event on April 21st. So we've got a fact sheet that Good Company and EnviroIssues has put together that we'll have as handouts at that event as well, that talks about the climate action plan and the timeline there. I keep hitting that wrong button here. One of the...
Do you mind if I ask a question about something you said? With respect to the dots and the people voting, Tell me a little bit more about that. They were given a range of, we can do any of these 15 things. Which do you think is best? And then people said, this is the one I want us to do first, or how did that go?
So we actually had some strategies that Josh had identified, Josh Proudfoot from Good Company, that identified in other communities that we've used for all of the different workshops. So we talked about those strategies, and then we took input from the group as well on other ideas on how we could focus on climate change, and had those discussions, and everything was written up on on white paper and up on the board, and then everybody was given, it was either 4 or 5 dots that they could go and say, we think this is an important item to focus on, an important strategy that makes sense, that either is cost effective, it's useful, it's going to make a difference in the long term, and it's one that's scalable for our community. So everybody got the vote on those. Some of them received lots of votes, some didn't get any votes. And then that information is going to be taken and distilled into a document that will come to the Climate Action Plan Committee for discussion and review. And we'll have that opportunity in that group to further sort of figure out what those appropriate strategies are there.
So
There were kind of 2 parts to each meeting. One was to talk about mitigation. What do we change to slow it down? And the other part was to talk about adaptation. What do we have to do to prepare for the amount of change that is for sure coming, even if we do something? And then the dot exercise, there were 4 dots for mitigation, 1 dot for adaptation plan, with the exception of the emergency response one and reversed. There was more around adaptation in that
than the mitigation piece.
than there was mitigation, because there's not that much mitigation to do in that realm. But they were very rich conversations, and a lot of I was impressed with the kinds of people that showed up for the meetings. We had some good knowledge at those tables.
Yeah, they were good discussions. Well worth the time.
So it is coming back to the Climate Action Committee, though, for
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So so Good Company's taking that information, the voting, the prioritization, and that's all coming back to the committee to look at and consider. One of the other things that Good Company put together too were those educational material that I think we discussed at the meeting with the City Council, where we talked about the policy context, the greenhouse gas inventory, and the future conditions. So they put together white papers for all of those. Those are available on the website. Those were distributed to all of the implementation plan partners, and I think everybody got a copy of those after our City Council meeting as well. So they put those together as well. And continue to make updates to the documents as we go along. I guess I got ahead of myself on the implementation partner workshops, but here's the different dates that we did and the different topics that we had.
And those how did you select people? How did you select? I mean, was there sort of an open mailing to businesses, or was there?
I can only speak from the business ones. When Alma and I were out meeting with businesses, we would say, wow, it sounds like you might be really interested in being more engaged in Milwaukie. How would you like to help us serve?
Yeah.
So we actually had someone from PC Cast Parts who offered to come on board and to work with us on this.
Yeah.
So it was really, we were out doing
And Blunt.
touches. Blunt was
Those are
the other
the two
one.
that
Yeah.
two big companies that are attending all of them. Northwest National, PG, of course.
So,
But at each table was a different group of people that had expertise in that particular category. I'm trying to pick one to make sense. So at the fleet one, we had people, the guy, Damien, right?
Damien.
That runs our fleet. But then we had people that were from the electric car industry and people from different.
Did we have people? I mean, we know we have a lot of warehousing and shipping in North Industrial. Did we have people from there?
we had that was, we had that discussion as part of that material, this one's such a long one, material purchasing, use, and recovery. So that's where we sort of talked about that sort of information, but we did not have anybody specifically from a distribution warehouse.
We can take the information though. We had a great meeting recently with Alpine. They're interested in working more with us, so we can send it over to them for review.
We did spend a lot of time, Tristan and Blanca and I spent a lot of time inviting people and coordinating and trying to get people to come. We ended up rescheduling 4 of those from February to March because we weren't getting a good turnout in terms of RSVP. We weren't getting the right groups there. But so we really focused, on the topic. So the natural resource groups, we were looking for people. We had Rebecca Kaysen from the Regional Water Providers group there. We had both the Watershed Council groups there at the natural resource one. At our fleet and fuels, Damien, we had the EV fleet guy that sells, all he sells is EVs. It was a used car on McLaughlin down in Gladstone. We had somebody that installs the chargers, Durst Energy, PGE, so Northwest Natural were all there. So we had all different people that had an interest in those different pieces there.
And Blount and Precision Cast Parts participate in that part too?
They are on that Climate Action Plan Committee.
So they'll see the
see that.
results.
They'll see that. They'll
They
see
were
that. They were at one of them.
It sounded like David was at one of them.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which one. They all kind of blurring together in my head. But they were, at least one of them was at one of them.
Yeah. It was a good turnout though, and really good discussions. So from this, from those workshops, that we just finished up about 2 weeks ago, they're going to put together the notes from those workshops, and those will be made available for people to see out on the website. We can send those out to all the council members as well. They're going to take those strategies and scale them and evaluate the effectiveness of those based on the prioritization of the workshop. He's planning on bringing back about 48 different mitigation and adaptation strategies that we can consider as part of the Climate Action Plan Committee can consider. So they're going to, like I said, distill that, bring it to the Climate Action Plan for review, to prioritize and draft that document, and then they'll put together a draft Climate Action Plan. So the events that we have upcoming, May 8th, we've got it planned to have a discussion about mitigation potential with the City Council that good company will be here to provide that discussion. And then on May 10th, we'll have our second action plan committee meeting that will hold here in the conference room like we did last time. We have our May 31st summit, and that's where the community is going to have the opportunity to learn about the strategies and share their ideas and make comments and suggestions. And then from there, we'll take that information, and then we're going to have a follow-on climate action plan committee meeting. Right now, it's scheduled for that first 2 weeks of June. We haven't nailed down the final date yet. I'm still waiting on some input from good company on their timeline there, and where we'll go over the plan review and discuss what we've drafted, the draft that they put together, the draft document. And then we'll have our fourth Climate Action Plan Committee meeting in those first 2 weeks of July. And then we're looking at the late part of July to bring for adoption to the City Council.
Did we add, Peter, we added a fourth meeting, right? The original was only 3.
We added that fourth meeting.
And the committee said, this is not enough. There's too much here for 3 meetings, and especially the first one was a get-to-know-you sort of thing. So I think it was good that we added a fourth.
Yeah.
And I suspect there will have to be some mechanism after our contract with the kid company is over to continue to work, because it's feeling pretty abbreviated. A lot of that is based on the budget we had for the contract.
Based on what?
The budget we had for the contract. So they were willing to do X amount, put X amount of time into it. So I kind of feel like and it's not, I say that like we're inventing this thing, that no one's ever done a climate action plan before. We have to figure it all out. Predominantly, I think they're trying to get a sense of what Milwaukee's low-hanging fruit is, how we can prioritize the work we do here relative to what other cities have done. But for the most part, I think it's going to be, here are the things that are really effective that other cities are doing. I think that's going to be a big piece of it, and that's why I think they felt comfortable with the short period of time.
And we are getting all the raw data, right? I mean, we are keeping that. I mean, even though he's distilling it into a report or format or whatever, I mean, we are keeping all that, right?
For like the inventory and all those pieces for the emissions, are you?
That and the DOT exercises that the groups did and that kind of stuff.
I have not kept the paper documents that they have. They've taken those and put them in a notes and stored them that way. I can ask them for those, certainly.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily think just capturing the data, like this got this many dots and this got this many dots.
And here were all the things that didn't get
dots, right?
Yeah,
I think because I do think, you're getting 4 dots.
Yeah.
Right? And so you're kind of going, okay, well, I think these 4 things are the best, but that would be pretty good too, and that one you should think,
I'm really glad they only gave you 4 dots.
I think so.
So I want to talk about that for just a minute. So I agree with Mark that you could have had a more robust plan. I think that Peter's doing what he can within the budget that we were able to constrain. But I also think that you happen to hire a city manager who's done the job before, and Peter is passionate about this and has experience. We've got an intern who's got a great deal of experience. What we're really looking for, as I've talked to each of you individually over the last week, is that we can tell you what the work plan is. I could tell you today what the work plan is for the next couple of years in order to get this thing going. What I'm hopeful will come out of this process is, what are the things our community wants us to focus on? so that we weigh those higher. But also, what are the things that are going to get us to the highest outcome for for the lowest cost? So there's some of that in this too. So I don't want this to come across, especially on camera, that this document needs to be far more robust for us to be able to act. I think we probably could have acted without a cap. I think what this gets us is a better understanding of where our community wants us to invest, and I think that's critical for making sure we spend the money the right way. So that is my only clarification. In other cities where I've done this, I have actually recommended not doing a cap right away because you know what the low-hanging fruit is, so let's just go get that part done. But this does get us more community buy-in around what those priorities should be.
As part of the process, when they were doing dots, did any of it, was it explained in any way, this is the cost of this dot? So,
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Yeah, any,
No, we didn't. We didn't talk. We didn't talk about cost unless. No, it wasn't brought up.
And by and large, a lot of it, I mean, there's not a lot of, the city should go build 12 acres of solar.
Right.
Right.
There's not stuff like that. It's really programmatic things like how we think about our fleet, right? As far as city actions, or how do we
How do you incentivize electric vehicles?
incentivize people using electric vehicles? How do we get it into our code so that new apartment buildings have to have charging stations? And where do we put charging stations in the city so that it makes it easier for people, makes it more comfortable, makes it so that we start to move that process? It's things around that I'm trying to remember any that I sat through that were big, heavy financial lifts for the city.
Oh, there are some expensive ones. So, and we're not doing those. I think that what we're telling you is we think that there are some substantial ones that will push us in the right direction. A lot of these are policy-related negotiations that are going to take time, and we need staffing if we're going to try and get those things, more than we need to spend money to build things, if that makes sense. So this is really... I think the cap is going to highlight something. You can't get through this without some money spent. You're going to spend money. But the question is, where are we going to get, what can we get for less money right now? And I think that there's a very long laundry list of those items.
Yeah. So one of the other things in there too that needs to fit in there between that Cap C meeting 3 and the final plan and recommendations is the opportunity for the city council to look at the draft plan and provide some discussion there. I don't know what time frame that is, but it's going to be between that meeting 3 and 4. So once we've got the draft, the council has an opportunity to look at it and make comments on it before it's like, hey, here's the final thing to get adopted. So
Yeah, there's so much of it that's just policy things that really won't cause us to build something. The one that fascinated me was concrete. Right? It's a huge carbon footprint, and we're planning on laying down $50 million worth of concrete over the next 9 years. There's actually concrete that's where they use more fly ash in the concrete, and it reduces the carbon footprint of that concrete by some huge percentage. I forget the numbers, but it's stuff like that. Portland's already doing that. Multnomah County's already doing that. So it's things like that we can just move into our policy that doesn't end up costing us a lot of money. It shifts the way we're thinking about how we build things and what we do.
And just because that example has been used, one of the things that I will be asking if we continue down this path once the cap is developed is that you can be on the bleeding edge of this. You can push yourself so far that you're out front on everything. And I wouldn't recommend that. I think that there are some really proven things. Fly ash in your concrete is a great example that we should probably look at. How is it faring? I don't want to replace this in 5 years, so how is it handling a wetter climate? And if there are other cities that have engaged in that, like Portland, then that makes it a lot easier for us to go, well, that's proven. We're not going to have an issue. We won't have to come up with more money after the fact. So staff's going to be talking to you about. These things are working in the region. These things are a little bit more cutting edge. You guys may want to question this. And this one is, we need to see if some other communities who have more resources can try this out first, because we just don't have the capacity right now to take this on yet.
And you know, not all of the strategies either have a cost associated with them. Some of them are actually
Revenue generating?
well, a cost savings, because we changed the way that we do business.
Yeah.
You know, the way we do purchasing, for example, there's a lot of potential savings there where you don't have, you know, we're not paying for, you know, five different delivery vans to come deliver the same item that different places are ordering, you know, pencils, or, you know, we centralize some of those things perhaps.
We're moving quickly towards a lot of EVs in our fleet.
Yeah.
You're going to see a reduction in your budget of gas costs. So
the, I mean, on the pavement, I mean, there's also the issue of permeable pavement,
Yeah.
right? And that issue, which, you know, I mean, I hope we're looking at all of that in terms of safe and what the best options are. Because, you know, we did permeable pavement over on Locust Road, but I've also heard that has had a maintenance issue.
yeah.
So it's sort of like but that was 10, 12 years ago. So maybe there was something.
Leading edge of that.
Yeah.
Well, and that's my caution. So just so you know, we will do research on these items to make sure that they are proven technology or proven resource, so that we don't have to go back and fix them. It is possible that the response from us is going to be, we wouldn't recommend this, even though the carbon footprint is better. We don't feel comfortable that you're going to be able to resource this accordingly. We think you're going to be back in 5 years fixing it. I have no idea on the concrete. I actually haven't looked into it yet. But I just want to make sure you guys know that that's going to be a critical part of our staff reports if you decide to proceed with the CAP.
Anything else? That's all I had on what we're doing, where we are right now on that. So,
He's still here.
Streetlights.
Yes,
Yeah.
for ornamental streetlight coverage.
For actually an application of our CAP.
Cool. More LEDs.
Yeah.
Okay, so
oops. Where'd that go now?
So are the ornamentals ours?
Well, we're going to talk about who's going to own and how they're going to own.
Okay.
They are right now.
Mostly, yeah. There were 2 or something that weren't.
Yeah, and actually,
Changing.
the street light that we don't own is the one that's like right out.
On the corner.
Right.
One of them was on at 12:30 today. I was like, why is that on? One of those double-headed ones, one head was on
I
and the
saw
other
that.
head wasn't
Yeah.
on. I was like, why is that on?
Is that? There it is. I'm sorry. Stick clicked off somehow. Yeah, streetlights. So, as Ian mentioned, one of the things we're working on that relates to our climate action plan is the streetlights and looking at an opportunity to convert our existing high-pressure sodium ornamental streetlights that we have downtown to LED lights. And it really sort of, I think what started this whole piece was the Guardian development. So there's some new streetlights that are part of that development. I think there's 5 of them. And the question was, when they were putting them up, what sort of fixture did you want? What do we want? And the current our current PARs that we have, the public area requirements, has that certain street light in mind that we've put out there. And there wasn't; those were the high pressure sodium lights, and the LED fixture. There's some slight differences in terms of what PGE has approved for use on streetlights. Our PARs allows us to use that PGE approved streetlight, Public Works standards do. There's that flexibility there. That once PGE approves that ornamental light, that we can use that as part of that. So So that was really the driving piece when we started looking at it, was, hey, we've got these lights here, we're going to have to put new ones. What are we going to do with the other ones? Because there's going to be a little mismatch. So we talked with PGE about converting all the other streetlights to LED, and what would that look like, and how long would that take to do? So there's about 116 streetlights, ornamental lights in the downtown area. 114 of them we actually own. And then there's the one right out front here, just in front of the building, that PGE owns. I'm not sure how that happened. The current lights, those 114 lights that we have right now, are billed under their option B tariff, streetlight tariff, and that means that we purchased them, but they're maintained by the customer. So we put out that capital cost, get the capital piece of that. The option A piece that PGE has is where they've gone out and purchased it, and they charge you up front for the future cost of those, replacement cost of those lights. So they proposed to convert all of our downtown lights to LED. There's some savings, both in terms of energy savings and greenhouse gas emissions, but there is a cost associated with that because they're going to be picking up that future capital replacement cost in the future. So the fixtures that they had identified that were approved are those four there up on the screen there. The one on the top left is a lensless light that's top mounted. It is a dark sky compliant light. The one on the top right is a center mounted LED, and there's a little bit of a cover that you can't see on there, but it's not a dark sky compliant one. So because it's center mounted, you still get a lot of light scattering up. And then the two on the bottom are both the dark sky compliant fixtures that are top mounted, so the lights focus downwards. You don't get light going up into the atmosphere or up into the sky. So we had talked internally with the staff, the engineering staff, the CD staff, the planning staff, and it was the selected one was that one that I've got boxed out there, the Washington light there. So if you look, I just wanted to show you the comparison here between the three different lights. So this one right here is what is in the PARs. That's the picture that's in the PARs right there. The one down here on the bottom is what we have right now. And then this is the one that we selected.
So the one we have right now is not what's in the PARs? That's interesting.
No, there's a little
They're
bit
similar,
of a variation. It doesn't have that,
That's band around
shiny
it. Yeah.
finial on top and band around the side, yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
Interesting. Going to the dark sky compliant lights, that does meet one of our action goals that's in our city vision that calls for us to incorporate those new street lights to minimize light pollution. There are some conflicting, there's still a discussion on LEDs, if they truly are dark sky compliant. The manufacturers like to say that they're a warm and friendly light, but when you change over to them, they can look harsh until you get used to them for a while. But the way that they're dark sky compliant because they're focused. The light's more focused downwards, so it's not going up in the air. You're not getting that scattering going out there. There's that discussion that still some people don't like the color of the light.
Aren't those variable? Can't you get different color temperatures on the LEDs? I remember when we were doing it clear back
You can.
15 years ago.
See, and we just had the discussion with the Audubon people too about this exact thing.
The caution that I would have is the color and the lumen associated is very strictly regulated in streetlights. So I'm not sure that they actually can negotiate that for this in particular.
But are these streetlights?
These are streetlights.
Well, even if they're streetlights,
but they're
so
not
you're
like
going
the
from
top
sodium
high-
vapors that are the orangest possible thing in the world
Totally get it.
to completely white, and they're saying that that's the same regulation?
I am saying that it's just more complicated. That's all I
LED.
am. Yeah. And I ran into this several times when we were trying to figure out how to make sure that you got the right to people at different points in their life see light differently. So the older you get, your blue tones change, and so you have to be cautious as you're figuring out lights in safety corners. So I have no idea if that's what is going on here, but it is the one piece that I was just cautioning.
I was going to say the Audubon people definitely talked about certain, it wasn't just lumens, but it was
Kelvin temperature.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
that's color. So
Yeah.
Kelvin temperature translates to our eyes to color. So the higher the Kelvin temperature, the closer to on the blue spectrum it is.
Yeah.
And the lower the Kelvin temperature, the warmer.
And they have
it is.
one or the other that's preferable. That's
They say it should be
Better
much
for-
warmer.
yeah.
But the thing about LEDs is whether they're cool or warm, they're full spectrum lights. So they have visibility yet at even a lower candles
Right.
is better. So you can identify something with much less LED light falling out than you can with, say, sodium vapor or one of the current forms of streetlights, because it's a full spectrum. So it goes to that thing where our eyes perceive things differently.
You know, we actually, back in Illinois, so and I think I've told you this before, we had our own electric utility, so we took care of all of our streetlights. So we actually bought a drone just to help us check, our utility lines to fly through, but we also would fly it at night to see, we flew it at night a couple times and took pictures to see the difference between the new LED lights that we were putting in versus those high pressure sodium. And it was like remarkable, the difference up above when you're looking in terms of what the clarity, looking down at the ground, but also the light scattering, that orange sort of cloud that surrounds the city.
Right.
Doesn't exist around those LEDs. I mean, because it's much more focused and there's still a little bit of scattering, but it's much more focused downwards.
So back to the question of, I guess that would be the question to ask if there is some kind of bizarre regulation on color temperature of the LEDs. Can we get warmer? How warm can we get and still be within regulations?
Sure, we can work with PGE to ask them that question.
And I guess, so you also just mentioned that you lose some of the crispness of what you can see in that. It feels warmer.
No, LED.
So
There's a difference. There's a difference between sodium vapor and LED.
Yes.
LED in all colors
Yes.
is a full spectrum light, so that it is producing.
You believe that even at the orange,
Even so
you're able to see more. Okay.
at sunset, right? When the sun is shining through more of the atmosphere and it appears orange to us, appears warm, and the light you see on walls is orange. It's still the full spectrum. It's not, you haven't reduced the spectrum. It's just a different color temperature.
Out of everyone who might know the answer, it's you. So I'm going to go with it.
So, but I don't know. People make bizarre regulations all the time out of ignorance, so I'm curious to know
Sometimes they don't do it out of ignorance, but yes.
Misinformation.
Whose regulation would that be for?
I just wanted, for us, it was, I want
For the
to
state.
talk to a former employee who's in the back of the room. Who's listening to this presentation. We can talk later. You're great. But we'll come back to you guys and we'll look at and see if there's a way to do it.
Well, I was going to say, and I gave you the contact info for Mary Coolidge at Audubon, so I'm sure they have some thoughts on it. I can't imagine it's the first time they've dealt with that.
No.
If it turns out that it's not warmer, are you saying you wouldn't want to switch to LED?
No. We want to switch
We
to
want
LED
to
no matter
regardless,
what.
right? We just would prefer
We're trying to
the
kill
warmer
more birds with
possible.
not more birds.
Kill fewer birds.
Kill fewer birds with one stone. How do you
Feed
wanna say
with
that?
one scone.
And
Speed
PGE
with
is trying to
one
There you go.
That's really good.
see,
Yeah.
so that works.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
In other words, not just dark sky, but also the concept that the Audubon Society told us, which is the
Warmer
white
or the-
light tends to cause problems for the birds. So if we can have it warm and full spectrum and LED and not aimed up at the sky.
And none of these are on 99E, so I'm just curious about whether there are different standards. So when you said streetlights, I also have a follow-up question. Like, let's make sure we're talking about the right standard for the right street. That's
Well,
where my
some of
question
them
is
are on 9090.
Our acorns are?
Not our acorns. I thought that was the.
No, look
I
at
thought
the
that was
map.
in the report.
No, in fact, I'd asked Peter. He has a map on there. There's not a lot, but there are some right here.
I was trying to
okay.
find the packet. So
And there have been a couple.
I did. I just couldn't get it.
There are a couple that have been taken out by cars over the years, and I asked Peter to check on that because there's been a couple times, and maybe they've been replaced. I haven't walked it specifically
there's at
looking for
least
that, but
3, 4 that are on the block, 5 that are on the block.
Of the.
So we will look at the color and we'll let you guys know. We'll try and
6, 7.
make this warmer if possible. If it changes sight lines or vision, we probably won't, but we will have this conversation with you before we don't do that. There's no concerns about the LED from what I'm hearing, and there's no concern about the design, so we're going to proceed with these.
I had a question about the design.
Sure.
Again, I missed. You may have said it at the beginning. I was trying to get my packet to come up. Did Design and Landmarks go through them at all? Because isn't this their purview?
The way we looked at the PARs, that it was actually at the staff's discretion. If it was a PGE approved fixture, that it didn't need.
As long as it was the
Yes.
ornamental light fixture.
we're not changing the posts or anything.
Yeah.
So
And we're still having acorns, so I guess that's close enough for government work, as they say.
Well, and part of this discussion, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we will get consistency. So they're going to come back and give us a consistent light across the city, which I think will look nicer.
Yep.
And this is the right day to make this decision. So
well, and you had the thing in there about trying to check into the costs of doing a control mechanism for the ones
at the plaza.
And I wondered if it'd be worth knowing what it costs to do a control mechanism for all of them, right? Because it seems to me like in Milwaukie Bay Park, we have way too much. The level should be going down at a certain hour in the evening.
We've
It
talked
should
about
not
that.
be
We've
as bright
talked about
as
that.
it is,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So, and there may even be, I don't know, but there might even be some grant money for that kind of technology. I don't.
So the plaza piece, the downtown Main Street piece, we've looked at that as part of that larger project that we're doing there. So we would have to, like you said, we'd have to find that revenue source to do it in other parts of the downtown and the park, maybe as part of the Milwaukie Bay Park project. You could add some controls there to
It would seem to me
as well.
just because the Willamette is a sort of a flyway, as it were, and the Willamette Greenway and stuff, there may be some funding sources through the federal wildlife or ODF&W or somebody for that kind of thing. It may be worth looking at.
PGE has also been coming to the table to partner with us on a variety of things, and so this was actually brought to us by them as an opportunity, specifically knowing that we were having this development going in, looking at some specific technologies they've been wanting to try out. So it also, we may want to see if these work, and if we like them, and if they're successful, and if they are, then we absolutely know technology we like. And if not, we can look at PGE and ask them to fix them. So that's part of the focus for us right now, is just getting this pilot done.
One question that I had was regarding the poles. It says at the end that the poles remain ours until end of life, or hit by a car or damaged, at which time they become PGE's poles. And I'm wondering, does that affect anything with hanging baskets or our ability to, with our franchises and putting things on? Is there anything that creates a
No,
problem?
I've asked that question about hanging baskets. It doesn't affect any of that.
But they're going to own the pole
They would.
and the lights.
So in the future, so the new lights are going to own the lights. The new lights that they put in, they're going to own. So the
Right.
5 that they're going to put down by Guardian, they're going to own those. These, we're going to transfer them to the option A. So we're going to start paying for that replacement cost when the pole needs to be replaced. Like it hits by a car, PGE comes in and replaces it. When it just gets old and there's it's corroded, they'll replace that pole and the light.
And I guess my question is, does that create any problem for us in which the poles start looking nasty and we want them painted and they don't get around to it, or there are things we cannot put on them? I guess my concern is that someone owns a lot of poles in our city that we currently own, and I don't know that there's any problem with it. I'm just wondering if that's been any discussion. And do we want to own poles? Maybe we don't want to own
You
any
want to
poles.
go way back in the conversation before we got our first LEDs. I will answer that question partially, but that ship has predominantly sailed.
Okay.
Back before we installed the LEDs, if we had switched to a system where we owned all of the poles and all of the streetlights, that was 6 years ago, we would be 2 years away from breaking even on the cost to install all those LEDs. And after that, we would be saving about $280,000 a year on electricity.
If we
If we had gone that way. But at the time, the city manager and the councilors, I wasn't on the council yet, decided that they didn't want to do that investment. So they went with the option B system, which is PGE continues to own it. And they were told we would save X amount, and then they came back a year later and said, oh, we were wrong about that X amount. It's actually Y amount. And then they came back 6 months later and said, we made another mistake. It's actually, and so the savings we're getting is minuscule from what it could have been.
Well, but so that's about all the bigger
That's
light
about
poles,
it, yeah.
the traditional light poles. But on I think you have an interesting question on the ornamentals, because I will tell you the farmers market and the First Friday have banners on those along McLaughlin, and we dealt with this. I was involved with that for the farmers market, and we dealt with the city. We didn't deal with PGE.
Right.
So
And so what happens?
They'll still deal with the city.
I'm laughing at Alma. Sorry. She's literally spent the last 6 months negotiating a deal with PGE to make sure that we can get all of our hanging baskets and everything onto all our poles, and it is signed. So
Okay.
on that front, it doesn't deal with your maintenance question, but on the front of can we use them for the uses that the city has wanted to use them for, we have that agreement in place now.
For future polls as well.
So that's covered on that front, but it doesn't get into your question of will they maintain them at the level. What I can tell you is we had a pole issue while Gary Parkin was here, so my late 4th month. I called PGE and they were here within a day dealing with the situation. So they've been very responsive when I have called around their poles.
Okay. Electric utilities, for the most, are pretty responsive to their customers. I mean, they're really big. Reliability is a big deal for them, and not just on the making sure that you're getting the energy to your house, but taking care of streetlights and things like that.
But I don't think of them as much being so focused on ornamental poles. They're very different than streetlights.
They are.
Poles. And that's just, again, maybe it's not a problem at all. Just want to make sure that we were thinking ahead about what does that mean for future issues.
What is exactly the advantage of them owning them as opposed to us continuing to own them?
Well, we don't have the cost, the ownership cost or replacement cost in the future.
Right, but the math on that actually doesn't really play out, particularly when you changed over to LEDs, because the electricity usage is so low that what you would be spending for just electricity as opposed to the lease, which is essentially what we have with each pole, right? We're leasing each
leasing?
pole for X amount of dollars a year. That's how it in essence works. It's like a lease. It's like you're paying. We're contracting. We will pay you X amount per pole and light forever. And
You're
it doesn't matter
paying for that.
if the cost of electricity goes to zero. We're still paying the exact same amount, and it's far more than the actual cost of the maintenance and the upkeep of the poles. They're making a tidy profit on that.
They are making a tidy profit. Don't disagree whatsoever. There's a couple of things that went into the timing of this, and if you guys don't want us to go this direction, this is great feedback. One is that we have been trying to find ways to make the deal on the south end of the city pencil for the developers. We don't have money to invest in the poles for them. We don't have money right now to invest in the lights for them. And that was a cost we were trying to reduce. So having PGE own those was attractive, and I'm looking to Alma to let her correct me if that's incorrect. The second piece is that once we did that, then you have different lights on those poles across the city, and that's when we started to get nervous that then you have this differential that looks weird, and we're trying to create consistency in that image. So then we have the option again of coming up with cash from the CIP in order to make retrofits on our own poles if we're interested in doing that. But again, we haven't had a substantial amount of extra cash to put towards these types of things. And so we made a decision that we should go this direction to get consistency and to help the developments that we're trying to help and to get some of these things taken care of.
And we'd be paying the cost to convert it to LED.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Not cheap upfront, but
and it can pay back. That's why I'm telling you guys right now, if you're not comfortable with going this direction, tell us right now. We're great to come back and find some other solutions for you. But that had been some of the intent around that.
Relative to the whole rest of the city, this is kind of a drop in the bucket.
It is.
Really. So actually, in that question, so there are LEDs, I think it was our 400 watt ones that didn't get switched out to LEDs because they were still trying to decide which heads they liked better for the. There was some certain wattage that they hadn't switched out. Where is that, or do we need to light that fire?
I wasn't aware of that. So downtown, or
It's all over the city.
All over the city.
If you drive around the city at night, you'll see, oh wow, look, there's still sodium vapor there. Why is that? There's one there. And it was a difference between.
I think there's one right
There was
by
one-
the railroad trestle
I
on
think there is two.
McLaughlin.
There was one wattage that they were good, and that was sort of our common wattage. That was what 80% of our lights were, or 70% of our lights. So they switched all those out. Then there was I think it was the higher wattage ones. They didn't switch out because they weren't happy with the heads, or I don't know what it was. So it was that, and then our acorns were the two things that didn't get switched. So now we're getting the acorns. So it'd be really cool if we.
yeah. So the discussions we've had with them initially were focused on the acorns, but they've talked about their plan is to convert everything to LED. So, but I'll find out what
the timing is.
Yeah.
What the timing is on those.
I mean, they should be doing it statewide. They last way longer. They're obviously operate a lot cheaper.
Yeah. So they actually think that they can convert all the downtown ones by the end of the calendar year. I think that's probably pretty quick, but they think that they can do that. So, and that would require us from transitioning from that option B to option A. There's a cost associated with that. I've got that in the report. But there's also, the benefit in terms of our, the energy use, and we're going to save about 35,000 kilowatt hours per year. And then there's greenhouse gas emissions that they've got. I got that information from PGE there.
And there's the benefit of not having the replacement. The dark sky benefit, the energy benefit, the dark sky benefit, and the benefit that we're not on tap to replace them. They are. Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's not insubstantial.
No,
right?
it isn't. It has an upfront cost.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
real money,
Yeah.
for sure.
Let's send out a press release to the Audubon Society right away.
Are you still getting those?
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah, I've gotten a few this week.
I haven't gotten any.
Oh, yeah, get them.
I don't hear anything.
So
You don't get those emails?
no, I
Go in
don't.
your other folder.
They must go in
You
your.
created a rule that I'm not.
Because I get a report on what's in my other folder.
No, I mean, I'm
Opening
one
it.
of these days I'm going to count, and it'll be part of a bigger conversation about more stuff.
Yeah,
You
that's, we've gotten a couple hundred before,
Yeah.
or I have before.
Yeah.
Oh, 400.
Yeah.
Have you
Oh,
counted?
jeez.
I have them in a special folder. I
Okay.
follow
I'm
them
not
all in
getting
one
them.
folder, and it's approaching 400.
We have an executive session still to get through tonight.
Yeah.
So we're going to eat while we do that, but
Yes.
if we can go into executive, that'd be great.
Great. You want to?
Thank you, Peter.
Upon adjournment of the work session, the council will meet in executive session pursuant to Oregon Revised Statute ORS 192.6602E to deliberate with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. And with that, we are adjourned in our work session.